On a first-class flight, a man insults Elon Musk and is immediately confronted with the truth. Flight 311 to Tokyo Narita was about to take off from Los Angeles International Airport, and the first-class passengers began to gather. Among them was Oliver Bennett, a man whose ego was as evident as his decorated shirt. Oliver was used to being the center of attention. His company, a brilliant software startup, had recently received its first billion-dollar valuation. His social network was full of congratulations. "Disruption is my middle name," he wrote beneath a photo holding a glass of champagne. "Mr. Bennett, welcome aboard," the flight attendant said with a forced smile, indicating that she knew the guy. Oliver grunted and entered the first-class cabin, where each seat felt like a private podium, complete with reclining functions and a personal screen. "Seat 2A. You're home for the next 12 hours. He removed his blazer with a flourish, letting it drape over the seat, and put on a pair of noise-canceling headphones. A glance at the seat next to him showed that it was still empty. "Well, maybe I can get some peace this time," he thought. Moments later, a figure appeared, sitting down in seat 2B. The man wore a simple t-shirt and well-worn shoes, a stark contrast to Oliver's attire. His face was partially obscured by a baseball cap, and he moved with the ease of someone accustomed to blending in. Oliver barely glanced up, typing on his laptop as the man settled in. "Good evening," the man said casually. "Yeah, sure," Oliver muttered without looking up, too busy sending out another tweet to his 500,000 followers. As the plane door closed and the engines roared to life, Oliver felt a growing curiosity. Something about the man seemed off, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Probably another tech guy trying to live the dream, Oliver thought, looking back to his seat. The flight attendant walked by, offering champagne. The man declined, opting for a glass of water instead. Oliver rolled his eyes. "Water? Seriously? You could be on a bus," he said, loud enough for the man to hear. But the man didn't say anything, just offered a smile. When the plane reached cruising altitude, Oliver's natural need to dominate any room or cabin emerged. He finished his champagne in one gulp, placed the glass on the tray with a click, and turned to the man in seat 2B. "So what do you do?" Oliver asked, his tone burning with the kind of interest that wasn't genuine. The man turned slightly, his face still obscured by his cap. "I'm in technology," he replied simply. Oliver smiled. "Ah, same as me. I think we have some war stories to share." He settled back and crossed his feet, ready to turn the conversation to his favorite topic, himself. But the man was unfazed. He just grunted softly and went back to fiddling with his phone. Oliver wasn't used to being ignored. His curiosity turned to irritation. "You know," he began, his voice loud enough to attract the attention of nearby passengers, "the tech world is full of people who get way too much credit for half-baked ideas. Take Elon Musk, for example. Everyone's so busy calling him a genius, they forget how desperate he is." The man in seat 2B paused, his finger pointing at his phone screen, but he didn't look up. Emboldened by the lack of response, Oliver continued. "SpaceX? Sure, that's impressive if you like throwing billions at exploding rockets. Tesla? Overrated. And don't even get me started on Twitter. That circus? A disaster." A faint smile escaped the man in seat 2B. It was barely noticeable, but it lit a fire under Oliver's nose. He stared straight ahead, ready to make his point. "Do you think I'm wrong?" Oliver challenged. "No," the man said, his voice calm, almost friendly. "I think you're in love." Oliver laughed, unsure if it was a compliment or an insult. "In love? I call you a realist. People like Musk thrift. They're just riding the hype wave, nothing more." A few passengers glanced back now, listening intently. Oliver grew fond of the attention, mistaking it for admiration. The man in seat 2B, however, seemed completely unconcerned. "Well," the man said, finally looking up despite his cap still covering much of his face, "everyone's entitled to their opinion." Oliver rolled his eyes, taking the comment as an excuse. "Yeah, but facts are facts. Musk is a walking PR toy. People like me, real innovators, are the ones building the future, not just blowing hot air." The man offered a polite smile and went back to his phone. Oliver glanced back, smiling to himself. Another desperate man, he thought. Little did he know that his companion's calm was not ignorance, but restraint. The sound of engines filled the cabin as the first-class passengers settled into their routines, reading, watching movies, or sipping cocktails. But Oliver was far from relaxed. His irritation lingered as the man in seat 2B remained silent, offering only curt responses to Oliver's sharpest comments. "Let me guess," Oliver said, unable to help himself. "You're one of those startup guys, something in crypto or AI, right? Everyone's jumping on these fad bandwagons these days." The man glanced over briefly, his expression unreadable. "Not exactly," he replied, the ambiguity only adding to Oliver's irritation. He suffered from being the center of attention, and the lack of engagement from the man in seat 2B was a challenge to his ego. "What do you think of Musk, then?" Oliver asked, his voice clearer now. "I mean, if you're in tech, you should have an opinion." The man hesitated for a moment, then walked away. "He's done some interesting things," he replied simply, his tone neutral. "Interesting stuff?" Oliver repeated, laughing. "That's the understatement of the century. The guy's a walking contradiction, talking about saving the planet while flying around in private jets, pushing the future on Mars while barely addressing problems here on Earth." For the first time, a flicker of something crossed the man's face, maybe amusement, maybe cold irritation, but it disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. "Maybe he's just doing what he thinks is best," the man replied simply, his tone neutral. "Huh. Doing what he thinks is best," Oliver scoffed. Spoken like someone who's never actually dealt with the real-world consequences. "It's all theory until you're the one paying the tax." The flight attendant arrived with their dinner orders, breaking the tension. The man in seat 2B ordered a simple vegetarian meal, while Oliver chose the steak, cooked medium rare. As the plates were placed before them, Oliver noticed how calmly the man ate, as if he had all the time in the world. "Must be good," Oliver muttered under his breath, without a care in the world. The man glanced at him but said nothing, concentrating on his dinner. As the hours passed, Oliver's curiosity about his companion grew. There was a quiet confidence about the man, a kind of understated presence that Oliver couldn't quite place. He didn't seem intimidated by Oliver's random criticisms or his obvious attempts to draw him into a script. And then, the signs came. Flight attendants passing by seemed to look at the man in seat 2B with a mixture of curiosity and respect. One even addressed him softly. "Let me know if you need anything, sir." Oliver noticed this and laughed. "Who's this guy?" he said, walking away, pretending to adjust his seat. The man's face was still partially obscured by his baseball cap, but something about his jaw-line, the way he carried himself, struck Oliver. As the cabin lights dimmed and the surrounding passengers settled in for the long journey, Oliver decided to let it go. Just an eccentric rich guy, he thought. Nothing more. He put on his headphones and reclined his seat, missing the subtle look his companion gave him. A look that indicated something far beyond what Oliver could imagine. Hours passed, and the cabin remained silent, save for the occasional clatter of silverware and the hum of the plane. Oliver, now with several drinks in his system, was feeling loose and bold. He wandered off, scanning the cabin for any new distractions. His gaze fell again on the man in seat 2B. "Okay," Oliver said, breaking the silence between them. "I give up. You have to tell me. What's your deal? You're sitting there all calm and mysterious. Let me guess, are you some venture capitalist? Or some eccentric whiz kid?" The man smiled softly, his eyes never leaving the page of the book he'd just opened. "Close," he replied, though he didn't offer any further details. "Come on," Oliver pressed, his voice carrying a hint of challenge. "You can't just sit here like some enigma and not spill anything." The man finally looked up, meeting Oliver's gaze directly for the first time. His eyes were dark, observant, and suddenly very familiar. But before Oliver could put the pieces together, a flight attendant approached his row with an air of formality. "Excuse me, Mr. Musk," she said, her voice respectful but professional. "The captain wanted me to inform you that your connection in Tokyo has been confirmed, and they will be ready for you upon landing." Oliver pulled away. The words didn't register right away, as if his brain needed a moment to process. "Mr. Musk?" The man in seat 2B gave the flight attendant a polite nod. "Thank you," he said, his tone warm but matter-of-fact. The pieces clicked together with stunning finality. The attire, the unexpected demeanor, the quiet confidence. This wasn't just someone sitting next to him. This was Elon Musk. Oliver's mouth went dry. His heart pounded in his throat as he replayed the last few hours in his mind. Every insult, every put down, every shouted out. It had all been directed at the same man he'd thought was an intangible public figure miles away from his life. For the first time on the flight, Oliver was completely speechless. Elon Musk adjusted his cap slightly and went back to his book as if nothing had happened. But Oliver's discomfort was palpable. His bravado, so robust before, now wavered under the weight of humiliation. The passengers around him, who had pretended not to notice, were now exchanging subtle glances. Their expressions were a mix of amusement and second-hand embarrassment. Oliver cleared his throat, desperate to regain his composure. "So, you're Elon Musk?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elon closed his book and placed it gently on the table in front of him. "So I'm told," he replied, his tone bright but tempered with humor. Oliver's face was pale. I didn't mean anything by what I said before. Just, talking." "You can't take these things personally," Elon said, pulling back slightly, studying Oliver with an expression that was impossible to read. Then, with a small smile, he said, "Don't worry, I don't." The tension in the cabin was thick enough to be cut with a knife. Oliver walked away with his glass, taking a long sip in an attempt to calm his nerves. Elon, on the other hand, seemed completely unconcerned, exuding a calmness that only added to Oliver's discomfort. "So," Oliver began, trying to find a way out of the hole he'd dug for himself, "you're probably used to people criticizing you, right? It comes with the territory." Elon stepped back, his expression thoughtful. "I suppose," he said, "but I've always believed that criticism is useful, as long as it's constructive." He glanced at Oliver, a glint of amusement in his eyes. Was it constructive? Oliver's face burned. "Well, I didn't realize I was talking to you, obviously." Elon's smile widened a bit, but his tone remained measured. "Does it matter who you're talking to? If the points are valid, they stand, regardless of the audience." The answer left Oliver momentarily stunned. For all his bravado, he didn't have an answer. Elon, however, wasn't finished. "You mentioned Tesla," Elon said, his voice calm but deliberate. "Do you know how many lives have been saved by our driver assistance technology? How many people have avoided accidents because of the tools we've implemented?" Oliver shifted in his seat, suddenly feeling very small. I guess I've never thought of it that way." "And SpaceX?" Elon continued, his gaze steady. "You called it desperate. But did you know that our rockets have reduced the cost of access to space by over 90%? That we're developing technologies that could one day protect humanity from extinction events?" Oliver opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The weight of Elon's words hung in the air. "And as for Twitter," Elon said, his tone suffering a little, "yes, it is chaotic. But sometimes chaos is necessary for change. Ideas evolve through friction. Without it, there is no progress." The entire first-class cabin seemed to hold its breath. Elon's words weren't angry or defensive. They were simply factual, delivered with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove anything. Oliver flinched. "Look, I didn't think you would be here." Elon pulled away slightly, his expression gentle but firm. "The truth doesn't change based on who's listening. Maybe next time, consider this before you speak." It wasn't said in anger, but it hit Oliver harder than any insult could. He leaned back, suddenly feeling very small in the vast expanse of the first-class cabin. For the rest of the flight, Oliver remained silent. His mind replayed every word he had said, every cutting comment and insult aimed directly at the man sitting inches from him. He felt a mixture of shame, guilt, and a strange sense of respect. Meanwhile, Elon returned to his book, as if the confrontation had been nothing more than a passing conversation. Every now and then, a flight attendant would approach him with quiet professionalism, offering subtle gestures of deference that now made perfect sense to Oliver. The humiliating moment weighed on Oliver like a stone around his neck. It wasn't just about being caught in a moment of hubris. It was about realizing how little he truly understood about the people and ideas he had so casually dismissed. As the cabin lights dimmed and most of the passengers settled down to sleep, Oliver hesitantly pulled away. "Hey, Mr. Musk," he whispered, his voice low enough not to disturb the quiet cabin. Elon glanced up, his expression neutral but attentive. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," Oliver said, his words heavy with sincerity. "I was out of line. It's easy to criticize from the outside, but I can't imagine the weight of doing what you do." Elon studied him for a moment, then nodded slightly. "Apology accepted," he said simply. "It's not easy, but that's the nature of progress. You're always going to face resistance, especially from people who don't see the big picture." Oliver nodded, his face serious. For once, he didn't have anything clever to say. As the plane began its descent toward Tokyo, the cabin came alive with the sound of passengers shuffling and preparing for their arrival. Oliver stared out the window, watching the city lights grow brighter as the plane got closer. He thought about all the times he had dismissed people like Elon Musk, visionaries who dared to think big, aim higher, and tackle problems most wouldn't even attempt. In his effort to appear knowledgeable, he had ignored the courage it took to face constant criticism while pursuing something meaningful. As they descended, Elon turned to Oliver one last time. "Good luck with your work," he said, offering a small smile. "I hope it's something that makes a difference." Oliver watched as Elon disappeared into the crowd, discreetly escorted by airport staff to his next challenge. For the first time in years, Oliver felt something unfamiliar: humility. He wasn't sure what he would do with this new perspective, but he did know one thing. He couldn't go back to being the man he was when he boarded that plane. The lesson was clear. It's easy to criticize from the outside, but the real challenge is standing up, understanding, and creating change. If you like this video and it added something to you, watch the next one. The next video will add more value to you. Don't forget to like it. Your comment is very important. Subscribe to the channel. Recommend this video to a friend and watch the next video.